Okay, I am going to talk about a very strange question, which is the sexual status of the couturier at the time of Christian Dior. So after the presentation of Auriol, at the end of the presentation, she made some evocation of this question. I would like to spend a few minutes on these topics, which is more a succession of questions for me than a succession of answers. So I apologize for that from the very beginning. Let's start from the beginning of everything, America. And this is a magazine of 1955, a magazine which is basically which was basically read by men. And there is this extraordinary title, "That Friend of Your Wife's Named Dior." So this needs some explanation. The point of view of the magazine and of the writer is to take the point of view of the husbands. We don't talk enough about husbands in Dior's collection, so it's the time to do it. The point of view is the point of view of the husbands, which is quite rare at that time, and especially with that type of very strange way to put things with words. Otherwise, at that time, we have to go back in the 50s. In the 50s, I mean, men did exist. So sometimes there were interviews in the streets to have their advice about the other part, the woman, and so about especially the outfit. So most of the time, it was the answers were a mixture of indifference and comprehension and some kind of attraction and approval, but always with a gling of, I don't know, gling of anyway, a gling of irony. So some kind of ironic approval. What men say about women outfits? I mean, this is still a subject to be documented for the 50s and maybe for today's also. Okay, so let's go back to the explanation of the text. That friend. How to understand that word? It is though that friend was a third character, a third person, walking his way into the intimacy of the couple. There is a stranger in the house. You've maybe experienced that kind of feeling. There is someone in the house. In the house of the couple, there is someone walking in. And this one is Christian Dior. He is certainly the first one to have provoked that kind of feeling, which has never been really identified, as far as I know, in the press, in magazine, maybe in memories or maybe in private correspondence. This is another job for another life. But and this working his way, the way he works his way, it's a source at the same time of irony and anxiety. There is a kind of anxiety in this title. That friend of yours was named Dior. This is, if I am going to translate that in a very everyday word. This is the man who dresses your wife. If you put this in these terms, it becomes some kind of frenetically dangerous. This is a man who dresses your wife, and it is a message sent to the American male. At that time, apart from the husband and the doctor, as far as I know, there was no so many men who had access to the woman body. I mean, the access was not a free access. Especially, it was sometimes not free, an expensive access. But this title, in fact, showcases a kind of very powerful fantasy. a fantasy, yes, a fantasy of sexual promiscuity, or maybe sexual proximity, or a sexual event. So there is something which is unspoken in this title, but we can read through the title. And there is another message which is also unspoken, but it's also an open secret. So we have to decide today if really it was an open secret at that time. The open secret is in the mind, unconscious or conscious of the American male who is reading that in fact this friend is not a man. He's a friend, but he's not a man. Why he's not a man? Because he is homosexual. So, which is a great relief. It's a great relief for someone with a normal husband. I am a normal husband. So I know. I know what they felt at that time. So he's homosexual. He's not anymore in danger. So there is a name for that. At that time, there were no name. It's in a prehistoric time when the word gay didn't exist, at least in France. The word gay arrived in the 80s, the end of the 70s and early 80s, and it was a big change in terms of terminology and of perception of things. But this is another subject. I want to show you something. I want to show you an extract from an interview of Christian Dior, if you mind, if my chief mind. Okay. It's an interview from '65, like this magazine, of Christian Dior in a very popular program called Person to Person. It's right, a good title for the subject. Person to Person, and it's an interview of Christian Dior. He's in his New York apartment, and he's being interviewing by this journalist, and they are talking about his charms. He has a lot of charms, a lot of charm. And there is another subject. I want you to discover it. I don't want to use the word.
Will be some important new colors.
Well, good luck next week anyway, though I'm sure you won't need luck. Do you believe in it?
Oh, yes. I am very superstitious. Would you like to see all the charms I wear with me?
Yes.
Look here. There are two hearts there.
Yes.
Here, some lily of the valley. A four-cornered glove.
Yes.
A gold coin. And there is a star who is probably the most important of them.
Yes.
And naturally, I have always a piece of wood in my pocket to touch it when it's necessary.
Tell me, is that one of your own ties you're wearing?
Yes, of course. I would be a very, very bad businessman if I would not wear it.
Well, Mr. Dior, you're about 50 years old and still a bachelor. Could this mean perhaps that you know women too well?
You know, in my house in Paris, I have about 1,000 women working. And you know, believe me, it's quite enough for a harem.
Tell me, what sort of woman appeals to you most?
Oh, for my taste, personally, I prefer medium-sized women and rather brunette.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dior. Okay. Okay, but just to give you the feeling of the very puritanical surrounding, which can explain that kind of question, and with this very cryptic language vocabulary. Are you a bachelor? Everybody, it's a double language. So I don't know exactly how many men at that time in America could understand it was a double language. So maybe we could have a scholarship for that. But anyway, there was two things which are important in this presentation by Dior. The fact that he's a wizard, because he has all these charms. It sounds like an anecdote, but it's not an anecdote. So he's a kind of a wizard. And the other thing is that it's a wizard who has 1,000 wives. So that makes you can make a lot of things with that. It's a good start in life. Okay. Anyway, so this is, again, Christian Dior with the petite main, the seamstress, they are not afraid of him, you know, the big wolf. They are not afraid of the big wolf, and they are just, and I like this image. Anyway, sorry. So what can we say after that? What is the situation? Okay, the situation is this. It's a script. It's like a scenario. There are three characters. There is a wife who is apparently heterosexual, the husband who is heterosexual, and the couturier who is homosexual. And the whole thing sounds like there was some kind of unspoken contract between the three of them, some kind of unthought partnership, if I may speak like that. Anyway, there is a kind of silent, mute partnership about what's going on between these three, inside this triangulation. And in this triangulation, the couturier dresses the wife, adorns her for the delectation of other men. But he never touches her, and he never desires her. In a way, he's the master of the outfit, the female outfit ceremonies. But that's an image of that. You see, there are certain numbers of pictures which are like cliché when we see the couturier with little wand. So it has practical reason because you can't spend your time touching things, I mean women, and you know, so you can do that. So you have to, you know, it's like if you want to point out some details, technically speaking, it's a technique outil. Tool. It's a tool. But at the same time, I'm sorry to say that because it's evident, but it's a magic. It's a magic wand. So in the images, in the iconography of Christian Dior, there is also this premeditation about the ambiguity of the wand. A technical tool, but at the same time, a magic tool. So this is important. But that doesn't mean that Christian Dior never touches women. He does sometimes. Especially this one is I like this one. And you have three steps in the scenario. And this woman is not anyone, it's Jane Russell. You've heard of Jane Russell? Yes? So she is, it's an American woman, and she was very famous for the generosity of her forms and especially her bosom. So, and this image is very interesting because you see the three steps, and here is almost really touching the bosom of the star. But it's all right because this is a part of the woman which is supposed to be glamorized, and so there is the male gaze, what we call the male gaze. So this is and they are taking pleasure to play with that, as you can see. But it is as though, in fact, the subject of the photography was not really the star, but what the couturier does with the body of the star. So this is another thing, okay? And so I'm almost finished. So this triangulation could be compared, could be discussed also, to another scenario, which is the court love scenario, the medieval court love, amour courtois, you know what I'm talking about? The court, and which has three people, there are three people working in the scenario, the king, the queen, and the knight. And the knight. Where is the knight? Anyway, the queen and the knight. In French, we say the chevalier servant. You know that expression, chevalier? It's the knight servant, and I found this other translation, the knight in shining armor. You know what I'm talking about. So it's a very strong scenario in the history of court love in the medieval, and maybe. You know, sometimes someone like Yves Saint Laurent, sometimes people have talked about him as a chevalier servant of the modern woman. But he's not, in that case, he doesn't touch her, so, okay, we agree with that, but he's a companion of the modernization. He's a companion of the modernization of women. And the husbands say, okay. I don't know how to say that. Okay, anyway, so if I want to put it in another with other words, I would say that in fact the couturier is the one who organized and showcases the erotic offer, the erotic market between sexes at a certain moment. So I like this expression of erotic offer, which is a mixture of erotism and economy point of view, this idea of market. Okay, and anyway, this, sorry. So two last remarks to add to this thing. The first one is this very strange place which is within maison de couture called the cabin. Maybe you've heard of it. The cabin it's a room. It's a very closed room inside the maison de couture. Nobody goes there, especially from the outside, except the couturier, the little main, the couturière, the seamstress, and people from here and there. And that's where live during the day the models. That's where they prepare themselves to be showed during the show and to be showed and to present the dresses to the clients. So they spend many hours, maybe 4, 5 hours every day there, and this is organized. It's a closed room, and there is a woman who is in charge of that and who is regulating the relationships between this woman. And this place is very, for instance, in Dior, this room is still existing, but it's used as a storage, yes, as a storage. It's amazing because it has there is some kind of something sacré, what do you say? Yes, and so each one has a own table and an own mirror. So this is also a place that could be documented, and there is, there are an étage, a floor, there is a third floor. So, and this is the cabin, but the cabin has another meaning. This is the other meaning of the term cabin. It means the teams. That means all the community of the model working for the team. It's called the cabin. So the cabin is not only the place, it's also the team of women working as model. So and I really like this picture because it tells a lot about the time, because as Oriol has told you, Christian Dior is, maybe I be more radical, is a couturier of an hyper-femininity, which is a woman who is already prepared when she walks in life. She has everything, the dresses and the accessories. So she's a pure artifact, And in fact, my idea, it's not a great idea anyway, but it's the idea that he is homosexual and is inventing his own vision of femininity. And this vision of femininity, at that time, in the early 50s, is very close from what you could see in transvestite cabaret in Paris and in Montmartre, where there was a kind of reborn, born again, not born again, but, sorry? In reinvention of transvestites. So that would be interesting to see how all those two universes works together. And finally, the very important question: what women at that time thought about this? What women thought about the fact that they were dressed up by a man who was homosexual, who didn't desire them, but would dress up them to please the heterosexual men. Is it clear? It's a little complicated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.